The House of Representatives here in the United States has just voted to ban California's EV mandate, whereby 2035 in California and the 10 other states that adhere to these rules have to sell fully battery electric vehicles. You can kiss your gasoline cars or even hybrids goodbye. But this news coming down is just the first step of the government's plan to dismantle California's aggressive attempt to get rid of internal combustion engines. Guys, we're going to get into this today, but we have other news to cover. But yes, I do have a spreadsheet on the EV ramp up and how it's not realistic. It is not realistic, but there's politics at play. And speaking of California, we're going to talk about how the dealers there might sue Honda. I know, sounds crazy, but General Motors is saying they're going to lose $5 billion this year ahead of tariffs. The global market is shrinking several percentage points. And then we'll talk about some deals on cars right now. Guys, the cars market's really slowing down, and you're able to see 0% APR once again like we did during the pandemic. But the reality of the economy and everything is completely different than it was just a few years ago with higher interest rates. So we'll get into that at the very end. Make sure to stay to the end. If you're new to the channel, my name is Kirk. I talk about car news every single day. I already made a video earlier today. This is my back end video. I try to keep you guys as updated as possible. And I'm about a day behind on this news. All right. So this has just cleared the House with actually a lot of Democrats crossing the aisle to vote against this fully EV mandate. And here's a map of the ZEV states, or the CARB states. I can't believe Florida used to be one. That's where I live now, but it is no longer a ZEV state. New Hampshire is not involved here. New Hampshire is kind of getting bullied by the CARB states. So maybe people who can't buy a gasoline car in the future and the surrounding states will just drive up to New Hampshire for a little taste of freedom and choice. But yeah, these are the states that are saying we're going to go along with California and their infinite wisdom to reduce emissions. All right. It sounds like a beautiful thing, right? Well, let's get into the reality of it. Looking at the state of sales in 2023, California's EV penetration was 21.7. And then they hit a flat line in 2024, just 22%. Guys, who knows what's going to be in 2025 here because of the political situation with Elon Musk. That's really, I mean, we know Tesla's sales are down this year. All right. And I'm sure the majority of those sales are coming from California traditionally. All right. So this number I expect actually to stay level or potentially go down, but we'll see. We have to wait out the entire year. All right. And before we get into the ramp up, California, believe it or not, has 4 times more chargers than it does gasoline nozzles. Why? Well, because it takes more than 4 times longer to charge up your car on average. All right, and if like a charger's down, all right, it's very, very time consuming to charge your EV publicly. It's a genius to own an EV if you're able to charge from home and you don't drive outside of that range. It's really, really convenient, assuming you have affordable energy. If you don't have affordable energy, then owning a hybrid in some cases is more affordable than an EV. You do have a little bit more maintenance, but still, it's much more practical. I love EVs, don't get me wrong, but forcing them at this rate, I don't think that's what people want. Cater to the 20-some percentage of 25% that want EVs in certain states, but just keep in mind, guys, California has the highest EV penetration. All right, so a lot of these other states, going back to this map here, have nowhere close. Guys, California has good weather. You're telling me in Minnesota and Maine, who it's essentially frozen Canada, that you're going to be able to convince by 2030 the entire population to be fully battery electric? That makes it just, is it possible? I guess anything's possible. Is it realistic? I don't think so. This is the kicker to me. This is when I know it seems very politically driven to line the pockets of politicians. All right. Like I said, I like EVs. They have their uses, and they work really well for a lot of people. I just don't prescribe to this sort of aggressive ramp up. And you guys can say what you want in the comments, but $20,000 fine per car over the 65% cutoff, that's just year one. So Guys, what does that mean? If Ford, for example, sells 70%, that means they're liable for 5% of their cars being sold in California to be hit with $20,000 per car. That is enormous. That's millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And you multiply that by all the automakers, guys, that's potentially billions of dollars. And where's that money going? It's not going to the taxpayers of California. It's going to the government there, and then they do what they want with that money. All right, this seems like a cash grab, and I understand that it was very similar in Europe as well with the EV mandates over there. All right, to penalize the manufacturers from making too much money so that they can capitalize it in the name of cleaner air. I want cleaner air. Don't get me wrong. I love clean air. But what we're seeing, this reeks of misappropriation of potential funds here where they bring this money in. But you guys can agree or disagree, and that's okay. I'm all for open discussion here. So let's get into the EV mandate starting next year, guys. California is currently at 22%. They're not going to be at 35% next year. So if this EV mandate doesn't get taken down by the Senate next, for whatever reason it goes to the courts, that means this is going to go into effect next year before it can probably be taken down. So what are they going to have to do? If Toyota, for example, can't hit this number with traditional sales volume, what are they going to have to do to avoid $20,000 per car? Well, they're going to have to reduce the amount of non-EVs they send into California and these other CARB states. Guys, California, let's say they get to 25% next year. All right, that means 10% of the entire California market is going to be subject to $20,000 per car. Like that's just mind blowing. So what are they going to have to do? Well, in my opinion, you're going to have 20% less cars available in California because these manufacturers don't want to get hit with $20,000. So if you have less cars going into California to feed the market there and the population there, car prices are going to skyrocket with a lack of volume, car volume in general. So if you thought the chip shortage was a nightmare just a couple years ago, that would pale in comparison compared to this EV mandate. That's just year one, but it compounds every single year going forward after that until we're fully BEV in 2035. Rainbow and unicorn, I like utopia, straight line adoption of EVs, guys. This is not reality. This is not mirroring consumer needs and wants. Okay, so what are you going to do? Well, California might say, hey, if you try to buy a car out of state and bring it into state, you're going to pay maybe a $5,000 fine. They could do that if they want, all right? They can do all sorts of things to punish you if you don't buy an EV. Guys, it's very worrisome, all right, for people who just want a hybrid or I mean, I know plug-in hybrids have an effect into here, and I'm not going to get into it. It gets very complicated. But people who just want a gasoline-powered truck or car, it's not like the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s where you couldn't see through the air in California. California has pretty clean air, and I know people still get lung disease and other ailments because of these, noxious emissions in the air. I get it, but I feel like all this hoopla over emissions, they've done a great job in reducing emissions over year. It's been great, right? But taking it this far doesn't make a lot of sense when these cars are not affordable. These cars are not, at least in these percentages, what the population is asking for. And if these politicians and people who want to really have fully electric vehicles, if it's all about making humans healthier and the planet healthier, why aren't they spending their resources and time focusing on the diets and lifestyles of people? All right, cars, that's a small thing, but obesity, guys, obesity and the diabetes epidemic in our country, pandemic, it's essentially a pandemic around the world at this point, is obesity, but especially in the United States. It's why don't we focus on that? That has a way more beneficial health impact to millions of Californians and maybe other people in these states. But guys, there's no money in that. That's how I see it. There's no $20,000 fine on obese people or people who want to eat what they want to eat. And I'm not for, guys, don't get me wrong, I'm not for taxing people if they're overweight or if they're buying sodas or anything. I know this is getting a bit off topic, but that's their choice. So if someone wants to buy a gas car, that's their choice. But you might be saying, Kirk, here's the thing. if you buy a gas car, those emissions are going to hurt other people around them. If that's the case, why don't we all just stop driving cars because, you could hit someone in your car. That's worse than the noxious emissions, right? Why don't we just stop doing everything that could potentially harm someone? So anyways, guys, just felt like sharing that. I hope the EV mandate, I'm not in a ZEV state, so it doesn't affect me, but it would absolutely affect the entire dynamic of the cars in the United States. You guys might be thinking, guys, the tariffs is a bigger deal. I think the tariffs might be a smaller deal, actually, than this EV mandate and how it would affect people in such a short amount of time, their buying decision, the cost of cars, the choice of the type of cars that they want to drive. It could become an absolute nightmare for the buyers and the car companies, because if they're no longer, if they're like, we got to sell 60% EVs in Maine, if only 20% of the Maine population wants to buy EVs there, it just makes no business sense to even sell cars in those states anymore. All right, you would have to sell such low volumes of gas cars in order to meet these numbers that you can't have a sustainable business doing that. All right, we already know EVs aren't profitable. Maybe for Tesla, but Tesla's making still a lot of money on green credits, selling their EV credits to other manufacturers who have gas guzzlers. All right, well, anyways, everything else I'm going to talk about, I went very long-winded on that, but I need to talk about this. The dealers in California are thinking about suing Honda and Sony Mobility because it could be it goes against the franchise laws. And they're saying if you're selling cars in California, you need to let us in on it. The dealers are saying, you can't leave us out of it. We're protected by these laws that we've helped establish over the last 100 years to protect the dealers. But as a result, selling direct to consumer is really hard to do if you're a traditional OEM. That's why Honda is like, hey, let's try this out. Let's see if we can do this. This is a third-party company. Anytime I'm at a Honda press event and they're asking the engineers, the CEOs about Afeela, Sony Honda Mobility, they say nothing because it's a completely separate entity. And if it's a completely separate entity, they would be able to sell direct to consumer. The problem is that Sony Honda Mobility, those cars are being manufactured in Marysville, Ohio, in Honda's manufacturing plant. So with enough evidence and good enough lawyers, I could see the California dealer saying, not so fast, Sony Honda Mobility. Your Afeela cars are going to need to be sold as a franchise, and we'll be able to decide if you can sell to direct to consumer or not. All right. It's happening not only with Sony and Honda, it's happening with Scout, Volkswagen Scout. Florida sued them. The dealers in Florida sued them. The other dealers throughout the country have been suing Volkswagen, saying, hey, this is really just a spin-off brand of Volkswagen like Audi or, I don't know, Lamborghini or whatever. You got to have a real dealership. You can't sell direct to consumer. So all these traditional OEMs are looking to cut costs by getting rid of the dealers. The consumers don't really want the dealers anymore because of the shenanigans they pull and the terrible things that they can, not all of them, but they can do to consumers to con them out of their money. So people just want, hey, I want to buy a car for this price online, take it or leave it at that price. That's the way dealers should operate, but they don't want to because they can't make buku dollars off of people who don't know any better, or maybe they just don't have a strong voice. So it's easy for finance department to capitalize on these people. All right. So anyways, direct to consumer, I want to see more of it, but if we see more of it and it's more successful, that will force the dealers to also improve their game, improve their customer service, improve the way they treat their customers and how they sell cars, maybe with upfront prices. Anyways, next article, GM says Trump tariffs are going to cut profits by up to $5 billion. Mary Barra is going to be okay with that. She just got a raise recently, making, $29.5 million. She got a 6% raise. So the company is going to lose $5 billion this year, but she's fine. She's got a 30 mil. That's a yearly salary. She's making 30 mil. Anyways, our business is growing. We continue to grow our investment in this country as we move forward. All right. Here's the thing. Year one might be the most difficult for these companies. All right. Like General Motors. But like I mentioned in today's video earlier, Mazda, Mitsubishi, they're like, I don't know how they're going to survive the tariffs. Honestly, it's really, really worrisome. It's really worrisome unless the tariff situation changes. If a deal can be cut with Japan, then maybe. But like General Motors will be fine because they can move production across the border if they need to and still source parts from Canada and Mexico, because the Mexican and Canadian parts are no longer tariffed if they comply with USMCA standards. All right. So that was one of the big changes yesterday. The global market's shrinking as well. But guys, if EV mandates happen, and it doesn't get taken down in the CARB states, it's going to shrink more than 2% in the United States, I would assume. But time will tell. If you guys want a good deal, 0% APR. Well, here's the thing. Most of these are on EVs, which I don't recommend buying because they depreciate so fast. This is a good deal. Nissan Pathfinder, one of my favorite midsize crossovers, big fat V6 and a bulletproof engine, silky smooth 9-speed auto, looks pretty cool. Has 3 rows of seats. I'm pulling it up for you guys. 0% financing on a base Pathfinder S is $31,000. Guys, that, my friends, is a killer deal. I know it's a base model, but that you're getting a lot of power, a lot of power, a lot of usability out of a package like this in the Pathfinder. It's a really solid car for around $30,000 at 0% financing. One of the best deals in the country. The other one, not the Mach-E, not the ID4, you would have to pay me money to drive the Hummer EV. Kia EV6 is a good car, but yeah, don't finance an EV. Here we go. This is the only other non-EV that has 0% interest, and this is what's crazy, guys. Look at these discounts. We see it. I guess it's 2025 model. I'll just look at 20 because there's still 23s and 24s sitting around on lots of Ram pickup trucks. But looking at 25s with 0% financing, guys, you can get them for the low 30s. Look, $32,000. It's $13,000 off of MSRP. So maybe they're putting in like, the $10,000 cash, like cash off instead of the 0% financing. But a base Ram 1500 can essentially be had for peanuts, all right, for a full-size pickup truck. You can even get a Rebel model. Guys, look at this. Look at the money off. 16 grand here. 16 grand off of a Ram full-size pickup truck. Just mind-blowing. Speaking of mind-blowing, I'm more interested in Slate. You guys do know I have a deposit on this truck. Hopefully they can deliver it by 2026. Time will tell. I would make all sorts of videos on this, customizing it, talking about my daily in and outs with the car, the truck. I mean, I can think of all sorts of things I could do with this. All right. And let me know if you want me to get the Slate pickup truck. I mean, honestly, I could get a used Nissan Frontier with a big fat V6, but it's not as cool as this. But the Nissan would be more practical in some ways. Man, this is a cool truck. Anyways, I'm going to end it there. What are your thoughts? I know you've already commented in the comments about the California EV mandate. I love EVs. I want the prices to go down on EVs. If the prices went down on EVs, like in this sort of linear fashion, which it hasn't and it won't, but if it did, maybe I would understand it. Maybe it'd be more logical. And if EVs charged as fast as gas cars and it was just as convenient as gas cars, I could see this go up. And if they had the range of gas cars, but when you're talking about selling fully battery electric cars in Minnesota at a high clip, in Maine at a high clip, upstate New York in a high clip, that's a nightmare. It sounds like a nightmare situation for the manufacturers to try to figure that out. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day and be civil in the comments as always. Peace out.